Have you ever felt a moment so electric, so unexpected, that it left your heart racing and your mind spinning? That's exactly what happened to me on a dusty ranch in the middle of nowhere, where a single week changed everything I thought I knew about my stepdad, myself, and the invisible line between us. My name's Lily, I'm 19, and this summer was supposed to be just another lazy break from college. I'd planned to spend it scrolling my phone, binge-watching shows, and maybe grabbing coffee with friends. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. My mom had jetted off to visit her best friend in a neighboring city for a week, leaving me with nothing but time and an empty house. That's when my stepdad, Tom, dropped a bombshell. His business partner at the ranch he co-owned had come down with something nasty, and he needed an extra pair of hands. "Lily, you're good with animals," he said, his voice calm but insistent. "Come with me for a few days. It'll be fun." Fun. I wasn't so sure. I barely knew the guy. Tom was 42, quiet, with a rugged kind of charm that I'd never paid much attention to. He'd been married to my mom for 3 years, but we'd never really bonded. He was just there, a fixture in the background of my life. Still, I didn't have a good excuse to say no, and the idea of getting out of the house sounded better than sulking alone. So, I packed a bag, threw on my old sneakers, and we headed to the ranch, a sprawling piece of land with rolling fields, a creaky barn, and a herd of animals that needed constant attention. The first day was all business. Tom showed me the ropes, feeding the chickens, checking the horses' water, and hauling hay bales. It was sweaty, dusty work, but there was something satisfying about it. Tom was patient, explaining things with a quiet confidence that made me feel like I wasn't totally screwing up. "You're a natural," he said, flashing a grin that caught me off guard. I brushed it off, but I couldn't ignore how his eyes lingered on me a little longer than usual. By the second day, I started to notice things about him I hadn't before. The way his flannel shirt stretched across his shoulders when he lifted a feed sack. The way his laugh lines crinkled when he told a dumb joke about the goats. He wasn't just my mom's husband anymore. He was Tom, a guy who knew how to fix a fence with his bare hands and who listened when I rambled about my college classes. We were alone out here, no distractions, no one else to dilute the space between us. It felt different. Not bad, just new. That night, after a long day, we sat on the porch of the ranch house, the air thick with the scent of hay and the hum of crickets. Tom pulled out a deck of cards. "Wanna play?" he asked, his voice light but with a spark of mischief. I shrugged. "Sure, but I'm not losing." He chuckled, and we started a game of rummy. To make it interesting, we added a twist. The winner of each round got to make the other do something. Nothing crazy, just silly stuff like singing a song or fetching a glass of water. It was fun, easy, and for the first time, I felt like we were actually connecting. Not as stepdad and stepdaughter, but as people. Then he won a round, and his eyes glinted with something I couldn't quite place. "All right, Lily," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Your dare is to milk Daisy." Daisy was the old cow in the barn, and I'd never milked anything in my life. I groaned, but his grin was infectious, and I couldn't back down. "Fine," I said, rolling my eyes. "But you're coming with me." The barn was dimly lit, the air cool and heavy with the scent of straw. Daisy stood there, chewing her cud like she didn't have a care in the world. Tom leaned against a post, arms crossed, watching as I fumbled with the stool and bucket. "You gotta be gentle but firm," he said, his voice low, almost teasing. I shot him a look, but my cheeks were burning. His gaze was steady, intense, like he was seeing me in a way he never had before. I focused on the task, my hands clumsy at first, but I got the hang of it. The rhythmic sound of milk hitting the bucket filled the silence, but I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. It wasn't creepy, but it was something. Something that made my stomach twist in a way I didn't expect. When I finished, I stood up, brushing my hands on my jeans. "Happy now?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed but failing. Tom's face was flushed, just slightly, and he looked away for a second, like he'd been caught thinking something he shouldn't. "Yeah," he said, clearing his throat. "You did good." The moment hung there, heavy, but neither of us said anything else. We went back to the house, played another round of cards, and called it a night. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something small but real. The next morning, Tom was already up, tossing hay bales in the barn. I watched him from the porch, the way his muscles flexed under his shirt, the way he moved with purpose. He caught me staring and called out, "Hey, Lily, grab me some water, will ya?" His tone was casual, but there was a warmth to it that hadn't been there before. I rolled my eyes, but headed to the kitchen, filling a glass. As I walked to the barn, my mind was racing. Why was I noticing these things about him? Why did it feel like he was noticing me, too? I stepped into the barn, the floor uneven under my feet. I didn't see the raised threshold in the doorway, and before I knew it, I was tripping, the glass slipping from my hand. I stumbled forward, crashing right into Tom. He caught me, his hand steady on my arms, and for a split second, we were pressed close, my heart pounding against my ribs. The air smelled of hay and sweat, and his face was inches from mine, his breath warm. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. I nodded, too flustered to speak, and pulled away, my cheeks burning. The glass had shattered on the floor, water pooling in the dirt. "Sorry," I mumbled, but he just shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "No harm done," he said, but his eyes said something else, something I wasn't ready to name. That night, as we sat on the porch again, the stars bright above us, I felt it again. That pull, that spark, we didn't talk about it, but it was there, humming in the space between us. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing. This week was going to be anything but ordinary. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to the isolation, the heat, the fact that we were stuck together with no one else to distract us. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Something was shifting, and it scared me as much as it thrilled me. That day, we fell into a rhythm. Work kept us busy, feeding the animals, cleaning stalls, checking fences. Tom was a good teacher, patient but firm, and I found myself wanting to impress him. Not just because he was my stepdad, but because he was Tom, a man who seemed to see me, really see me, in a way no one else had. When I managed to wrangle a stubborn goat back into its pen, he clapped me on the shoulder, his hand lingering just a second too long. "Nice work, Lily," he said, and the pride in his voice made my chest tight. I mumbled a thanks and turned away, pretending to fuss with a bucket, but my face was burning. By late afternoon, the sun was relentless, and we were both sweaty and dusty. Tom suggested a break by the creek that ran through the property, a shady spot where the water sparkled under the trees. We sat on the bank, tossing pebbles into the current, the silence between us comfortable but charged. "You're tougher than I thought," he said suddenly, his voice low, almost like he was talking to himself. I laughed, caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shrugged, a half smile playing on his lips. "Just, you're not the kid I met 3 years ago. You're different. Grown." His eyes flicked to mine, and there was again that look, the one that made my pulse race and my thoughts scatter. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I splashed water at him, trying to break the tension. He laughed, splashing me back, and for a moment, we were just two people messing around, not a stepdad and stepdaughter, not anything complicated. But when we stood to head back, our shoulders brushed, and the air felt heavy again, like it was holding its breath. That night, we played cards again. The porch was our sanctuary, the stars our only witnesses. The game was looser this time, the dare sillier. I made him sing a terrible rendition of an old country song, and he made me do a dramatic reading of a feed sack label. We were laughing, The kind of laughter that makes your sides ache, and it felt good. Normal. But then he won another round, and his dare wasn't silly. "Tell me something real," he said, his voice quiet, his eyes locked on mine. "Something you don't tell anyone." I froze, my heart thudding. The air felt thick, like the world had narrowed to just us. I could have brushed it off, made a joke, but something in his gaze made me want to be honest. "I'm scared I'm not enough," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "Like, no matter what I do, I'll never be the person I want to be." It was raw, more than I'd meant to share, and I looked away, embarrassed. Tom didn't laugh or brush it off. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and said, "You're already more than enough, Lily. You just don't see it yet." His words hit me hard, not just because they were kind, but because they felt personal, like he'd been watching me, really watching, and saw something I couldn't. I mumbled a thanks and changed the subject, but the moment lingered, a thread tying us closer. The next day, the work was harder, moving hay bales into the barn, a job that left us both sore and exhausted. Tom was up in the loft, stacking bales, and I was below, passing them up. He called down for water again, his voice rough from the dust. I grabbed a bottle from the cooler and climbed the ladder, careful not to trip this time. When I reached him, he was sitting on a bale, wiping sweat from his brow. I handed him the bottle, and our fingers brushed. It was nothing, just a fleeting touch, but it sent a jolt through me. He took a long drink, his eyes never leaving mine, and I swear I saw something flicker in them, something that mirrored the confusion and curiosity swirling in me. "Sit for a sec," he said, patting the bale next to him. I hesitated but sat, the hay prickling through my jeans. The loft was quiet, the only sounds the creak of the barn and the distant lowing of the cows. "You ever think about how life just happens?" he asked, his voice low. "One day you're one person, and the next you're someone else, and you don't even see it coming." I nodded, not sure where he was going but feeling the weight of his words. "Yeah," I said. "Like this week. I didn't expect." I trailed off, not ready to finish the thought. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Me neither," he said, and the silence that followed was loud, full of things we weren't saying. We sat there, side by side, the space between us shrinking, and I wondered what would happen if we let it disappear altogether. That night, as we ate dinner in the ranch house, the air felt different, heavier. We talked about normal things, college, the ranch, my mom's trip, but there was an undercurrent, a pull that made every glance feel significant. After dinner, we went back to the porch, but we didn't play cards. We just sat, watching the stars, the silence saying more than words could. I wanted to ask him what was happening, what this was, but I was scared of the answer. Scared of what it would mean. The morning after the storm broke, the ranch was transformed. The air was sharp with the scent of wet earth, the fields glistening under a hesitant sun. I woke early, my body sore from the week's work, my mind tangled with thoughts of Tom and the unspoken weight between us. Lying in the creaky guest bed, I traced the cracks in the ceiling, trying to pin down what I felt. It wasn't just the ranch, the physicality of the work, the rhythm of the animals, that had changed me. It was him. Tom, with his quiet strength, his steady gaze, his way of seeing me as more than just my mom's kid. The realization scared me, not because it felt wrong, but because it felt too real, too big for the roles we were supposed to play. Downstairs, I found him at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in a chipped mug. His flannel was rumpled, his hair still damp from an early shower, and the sight of him, so ordinary yet so vivid, made my chest tighten. "Morning," he said, his voice low, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Sleep through the storm?" I nodded, pouring myself a cup to avoid his eyes. "Barely. You?" He shrugged, his gaze lingering. "Good enough." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, but it was heavy, like we both knew we were standing on the edge of something. We had one full day left before Mom arrived, and the weight of that deadline pressed against us. The tasks were familiar now: checking the horses, feeding the chickens, clearing debris the storm had scattered across the yard, but every moment felt charged, every glance a question. We worked side by side, our movements synced from days of practice, but there was a new awareness in the air. When I handed him a rake, our fingers brushed, and I felt it again, that jolt, like static, that made my breath catch. He didn't pull away immediately, his hand lingering for a heartbeat before he turned back to the work. I wondered if he felt it too, or if I was imagining things, seeing what I wanted to see. By noon, the sun was high, the storm's coolness burned away. We were in the barn, stacking the last of the hay bales the rain had spared. Tom was up in the loft, catching the bales I tossed up, his shirt clinging to his back with sweat. I tried to focus on the task, on the burn in my arms, but my eyes kept drifting to him, the way his muscles flexed, the way he moved with a purpose that was both fierce and calm. "You're slowing down, Lily," he called, his tone teasing but warm. I laughed, tossing a bale harder than necessary. "Keep up, old man." He grinned, catching it easily, and for a moment it was just us, the barn, the work, no complications, no lines we couldn't cross. But the moment passed, and the weight returned. We finished the stack and sat on the loft's edge, legs dangling, sharing a bottle of water. The barn was quiet, the only sounds the creak of the beams and the distant cluck of chickens. I wanted to say something, to name the thing growing between us, but the words felt too fragile, too dangerous. Instead, I said, "This place, it's different. It makes you feel real." It was vague, but it was all I could manage. Tom nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "Yeah, out here, you can't hide from yourself, or anyone else." His voice was low, almost raw, and when he looked at me, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something that mirrored the confusion and curiosity swirling in me. "You've been good out here, Lily," he added. "Better than good." The praise hit me hard, not just because it was kind, but because it felt personal, like he saw me in a way no one else did. I mumbled a thanks and looked away, my heart pounding. We spent the afternoon by the creek again, the water higher now, swollen from the storm. We sat on the bank, tossing pebbles, the silence stretching between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was full, like the air before lightning strikes. "You ever think about what you'd do if you could start over?" I asked suddenly, surprising myself. He didn't answer right away, just skipped a stone across the water, watching the ripples. "Sometimes," he said finally, "but starting over doesn't mean you get to erase what's already there. You just build on it. Try to do better." His words felt like they were about more than just him, and I wondered what he was building out here, what he saw when he looked at me. "What about you?" he asked, turning the question back. "What would you do?" I thought about it, my fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. "I don't know. Maybe I'd be braver. Say what I mean instead of hiding." It was as close as I'd come to admitting what I felt, and my pulse raced as I waited for his response. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You're braver than you think," he said softly. "You just don't see it yet." The words echoed what he'd said before, but this time they felt heavier, like a promise. I wanted to push further, to ask what he meant, but the intensity in his gaze stopped me. Instead, I splashed water at him, breaking the moment with a laugh. He splashed back, and for a few minutes, we were just two people messing around, the tension dissolving in the sunlight. But when we stood to head back, our shoulders brushed, and the air thickened again, pulling us back to that unspoken edge. That evening, we ate dinner in the ranch house, the storm's aftermath still visible in the muddy boots by the door. We talked about normal things, college, the animals, Mom's trip, but there was an undercurrent, a pull that made every word feel significant. After dinner, Tom suggested checking the fences one last time, and I agreed, eager to move, to escape the confines of the house. The night was cool, the stars sharp against the sky, and the fields stretched out, vast and quiet. We walked in silence, our footsteps crunching on the damp earth. The rancho whirled unto itself. At the far fence, we found a post loosened by the storm. Tom knelt to fix it, his hand steady as he drove it back into the ground. I held the flashlight, my beam catching the lines of his face, the focus in his eyes. "You're good at this," I said, half teasing but meaning it. He glanced up, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Comes with practice. You're not bad yourself." The compliment warmed me, and I laughed, but the sound faded as our eyes met, the flashlight's glow narrowing the world to just us. We finished the repair and stood, the night wrapping around us. The stars were endless, the ranch silent except for the faint hum of crickets. I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap between us, but my throat was tight. Tom looked at me, his face half shadowed, and said, "This week's been something, hasn't it?" His voice was low, almost hesitant, and it broke something in me. "Yeah," I whispered. "Something." The word hung there, heavy with everything we weren't saying. For a moment, I thought he might step closer, that the space between us might vanish, but he didn't. He just held my gaze, his eyes searching, like he was trying to memorize this moment. "We should head back," he said finally, his voice rough, and I nodded, my chest aching. Back at the house, we sat on the porch, the stars our only witnesses. We didn't play cards, didn't need the pretense. The silence was enough, full of questions we couldn't ask, answers we weren't ready for. I wanted to tell him how this week had changed me, how he'd changed me, but the words felt too big, too raw. Instead, I said, "I'm glad I came out here. Really." He turned to me, his face lit by the soft glow of the porch light. "Me too, Lily," he said, his voice soft, almost tender. "More than you know." The words hit me like a wave, and I looked away, my throat tight. We sat there, the space between us both a bridge and a wall, and I wondered what would happen if we let it crumble. The next morning, Mom's car pulled up the gravel drive, her voice bright as she called out for us. The ranch spell broke, and we were stepdad and stepdaughter again, the roles we had to play. She hugged me, chattering about her trip, and Tom smiled, his quiet self, but when our eyes met, just for a second, I saw it, the spark, the question, the thing we couldn't name. We packed up, said goodbye to the ranch, and drove back to the city, the skyline swallowing the fields. At home, with Mom's laughter filling the house, the ranch felt like a dream, something that happened to someone else. But it wasn't. It was real, and it was mine, and it was Tom's. I didn't know what came next, if anything could come next, but I knew one thing, that week had carved something new in me, something I couldn't unfeel. As I lay in bed that night, the city humming outside, I thought of the stars, the barn, the way Tom's eyes had held mine. I didn't have answers, but I had a spark, a pull that hadn't faded, and for now that was enough.